As wonderful and beautiful as Idaho is, did you know that Idaho was the first state during 2020 to arrest people for going to church? Imagine that. It's one of our first protected rights, right? The First Amendment, we always say it. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion. And I don't have my Idaho Constitution with me. But Article 1, Section 18 says that the people's rights to worship shall be guaranteed, shall be protected. And yet Idaho was the very first state to actually arrest somebody for having church. Idaho is also the first state to arrest a mother for taking her children to the park. Idaho is also one of the first states, I think California might have been the first, but to actually send their state police or a police force to raid a business for not complying to the lockdown orders. And so, we may think that we are in a bubble, which in one way we are, right? But the effects of what are going on in Idaho are a little too close to home for me. And to say that in Idaho, we were the first state to arrest somebody for having church, that to me is, just to say that happened in the United States, right, is something that is hard for my mind to get wrapped around. But then to say it happened in Idaho, Moscow, right?
Yeah,
Moscow, Idaho.
University town.
Yeah, that's where it happened. And why did these things happen? What was the justification? Our governor, who's supposed to be a friend to liberty, decided that he was going to collect a bunch of money from the federal government, put the state of Idaho in emergency status when we had no real threat at all. When he put us in emergency status, he did it on the same day that $50 billion was released to states that were in emergency status. We had one unconfirmed COVID case in Idaho. Then on March 25th, which is the same day that Congress decided to release $2 trillion for states that are in extreme emergency status, Governor Little issued an extreme emergency order that same day, March 25th, and we had 136 unconfirmed cases of COVID. So he didn't do it because of COVID, and he clearly says in his order in 2020-07 that because of all these monies are being released from Congress, on March 5th, 13th, I put the state in emergency status. On March 25th, in extreme emergency status. Therefore, we qualify for all this money. And I encourage you, remember, 2020-07, so the year and then the seventh order he did that year. I believe that's the way it worked. Go read it for yourself. Then he says, therefore, I'm going to create a committee, and we're going to decide where these funds go. And I decide who's on the committee, and he even says this, and they serve at the pleasure of the governor. Imagine that. They serve at the pleasure of the governor, and then that the funds will come to the office of the governor, and we will decide how these funds are spent. Any idea how much funds he's received that have gone from the United States Treasury, or actually the Department of Defense, which I don't understand that, but they've either come from basically the federal government directly to the office of the governor in the excess of $18 billion. 18 billion. And now he's basically has full discretion on where he spends that, him and his buddy, and that little committee that he's created serve at the pleasure of the governor. Now, how are funds supposed to be spent in Idaho? Right. The legislature is the one who's supposed to determine. There are representatives, right? We elect them, we send them up there to represent us. They're supposed to be the bosses because they're our representatives. We're ultimately the sovereign. We send them there. And one of the ways that's supposed to work in government is that our representatives are the ones that's supposed to control the money, right? Control the money, and you control a whole lot of other things, right? And so That's the way it was designed. But our governor has now found a way in which he can bypass that. Now he doesn't need the legislature. He's not beholden to them. Now they're fully funded. We're talking about, 10 to 12 times the annual state budget is what he's received. So it's a tremendous amount of money. And now he's able to do all the things that him and his buddies have wanted to do. And the legislature has blocked him. Now he can do those things and he doesn't have to have their permission. And also he doesn't have to have the people's permission because our representatives are pretty much cut out of the deal. And why aren't our representatives screaming, saying, look, you're not supposed to do this. The Constitution doesn't allow you to do it. As we were contacting them, we were sending certified letters. We even went and got multiple opinions from different attorney firms. And because the law only allows the governor to keep the state in a state of emergency for 30 days. And if it can be justified, he can extend that for another 30 days, so 60 days total. And after that, if he doesn't turn the power back over to the legislature, then the law says, Idaho law says, then the legislature shall, that's an order, right, shall convene on the 90th day. And then they have the power to concur on a joint resolution to end the order, right? So the legislature, we informed them of this. They started to talk and started to move. And the day was January 23rd, 2020. And so there was a call out to all the legislature to come to the Capitol building on January 23rd. The problem is they were scared. They were scared too. And then the governor got his attorney and they wrote an opinion and sent it to all the legislatures. Remember, we're talking about the legislative branch, we're talking about the executive branch. They're equal branches of government, right? They're independent. One's the representative, one's the government with the bureaucracies and the agencies, right? Independent. They're supposed to check and balance each other. That's what we're taught, right? The attorney for the executive branch tells the legislative branch that they can't assemble without permission from the governor, from the executive branch. And guess what the legislative branch did? Oh, okay, I guess we can't assemble. Okay, I guess we can't, even though the law says shall, right? And what was the purpose of that? So that the legislature can check the executive. So then we're very frustrated. We're going, look, you don't have to have permission from the executive branch in order to assemble. You're an independent body. And you're not only that, you're our direct representatives. You don't need the permission from the governor in fact, the law would not even make sense if that was the case, right? Because when they assemble and if they pass a joint resolution in the Senate and the House, they don't have to have the governor's permission. But it's not like a regular bill that has to pass the House and the Senate and then the governor signs it. It only has to pass the House and the Senate and then it ends the order. It was clearly designed to stop the executive branch from continuing an emergency order indefinitely. Okay? So they came back to us and said, well, just be patient. We will take care of it in the 2021 legislative session. Well, that was 9 months. We're like, we have to deal with this tyranny and overreach and oppression, in our health districts, in our schools, in our businesses and all that for 9 months. And they're like, yeah, that's the only thing we can do. Okay, so everybody backed off, and then the 2021 session came around, and they did. They started a bill. They started a bill that was going to end the order. And it was just getting a little bit of momentum and starting to go into the committee, and the governor just saw it, and he's like, okay, he gets all the legislatures, call all the legislatures together, gets them all together, and they have a little private meeting. And he tells them, if you pass this bill and end my order, we won't qualify for the rest of the federal funds. So what did the legislature do? They stopped it. never even went into committee. It's extremely frustrating, but our legislature is very weak, and they're being completely controlled, manipulated by the executive branch, by the governor, and they're doing it for money, federal money. And meanwhile, we are still today under the executive orders. Yeah, most of the people have just said, look, I'm not going to comply, and that's why Idaho is different, and that's why Idaho is more free. But if any time he wants to come down and try to use the state police or local police, he can say, well, it's still under order, and he can do that, right? You remember when he was doing stage 1 and stage 2 and stage 3 and all of that? Well, now he's claiming that his orders are rolling orders. There's no authority whatsoever to be doing what he's doing. We are in a situation right now where we have an individual that we call Governor Little, that has taken basically the powers of all 3 branches of government into one, and now he's being funded to the point where he has millions of dollars that he is not accountable to anybody for, and that's the situation we find ourselves in.